This program is about a modern war. The primary emphasis is on the men, the terrain, the equipment, and the tactics. But of course, no war is fought in limbo. The motivation behind the small, cruel conflict, as you shall see, is quite complex. Although confined to a relatively small segment of the African continent, the ramifications of this war reach into the ideologies and economies of many nations. The long-term impact of the struggle remains at this point obscure. What is clearly evident, however, is that the combatants have fought long and hard, with the fruits of victory eluding them all.
This is a war in Africa that does not often make headlines. It's a conflict that has been fought for 18 years behind a curtain of near secrecy. Very few outsiders, few reporters on either side, have witnessed this war. The fight for control of Namibia, a territory in southern Africa the size of Texas. South African and Namibian forces are fighting the Southwest Africa People's Organization, commonly known as SWAPO. SWAPO is a guerrilla insurgent force trained and armed by the Soviet Union, East Germany, and Cuba. Throughout much of Africa in the past 25 years, country after country has been dramatically reshaped socially and politically. One by one, like dominoes, they have thrown off their colonial status. Political systems in some countries have been altered as a result of Soviet intervention. The Congo in 1960, Angola a year later, Mozambique in 1964. Then, a few years later, came Rhodesia, now called Zimbabwe, with its own war. Now, Namibia stands as the last colonial domino.
The instigation and active support the Soviets have given the Namibian SWAPO rebels has created a serious dilemma for South Africa. Isolated and under very heavy international pressure to abandon its apartheid policy, South Africa found itself faced with the possibility of losing this buffer state between itself and a hostile black Africa.
Namibia, also known as Southwest Africa, is a trust territory administered by South Africa under considerable controversy. The population is estimated at just over 1 million people. South Africa claims to be seeking a formula for a stable disengagement, but obviously none has been found. The main assets of this small country are a deep-water port on the route from the Mideast oil countries to Europe and the U.S., and a significant mix of strategic and non-strategic minerals. Almost 2 decades of guerrilla warfare has ravaged their settlements and decimated civilian life along the Angola-Namibian border. Back and forth fighting has left much of the area abandoned or in ruins. The basic infrastructure of villages and towns has been destroyed, destabilizing entire regions. This was the only school within a radius of 40 miles. It was destroyed by SWAPO insurgents. The SWAPO guerrillas infiltrate down from Angola either in a small group or alone. One of the most effective weapons they use is the landmine. It can kill and shock the people, disrupt communications, and keep the military tense and alert. Most of the young men who join SWAPO are recruited from their native villages and taken to Moscow or Havana for training and indoctrination. Since they live in extreme poverty with little or no hope for a better existence, they are easy prey for the offerings of the recruiters. Their training is completed in Angola, and they're sent off on their missions. Most of the guerrillas are taught the skills needed to handle these mines by the large Cuban cadre that is stationed in Angola. Landmines have caused most of the deaths among civilians and soldiers in the Namibian War. Those who must travel in Namibia learn to stay on the fringes of the roads, using the main throughway only when they have been swept and secured. Military forces proceed cautiously along roads in areas where guerrillas are known to be operating. Troops with mine detectors check the routes. Convoys move at a walking pace. When a landmine is discovered, it has to be disarmed or exploded on sight. Bomb disposal experts are a special breed of men. This unenviable job requires great patience and carbon steel nerves. Landmines are often set in layers or booby-trapped. One mistake could end in oblivion. Vehicles that are needed in the combat area by both military and civilians have been specially designed and reinforced to minimize the death toll caused by landmines. In spite of the heavy damage to these vehicles, the riders in this one survived with only minor injuries. The war also dominates the lifestyle of Namibians. The young children go to school in mine-protected vehicles under armed escort for their safety. The routine is the same each day, for landmines are a threat to them as well. Children going off to boarding school after a weekend visit home are flown out in an antiquated Air Force Douglas DC-3, still used extensively for transport purposes in this theater of war. The toll among civilians is high. Few adults know how to avoid mines and often stumble onto them or drive on mined roads with tragic results. Teenage children have set off mines while at play. Some have been killed, many wounded. In this instance, there were 11 children in a vehicle that detonated a landmine. 7 of them were killed outright.
And there's many children, is this?
Yes, well, that depends on the circumstances, you know. This happened now when the children were on their way back from school.
In the tribal areas of northern Namibia, dozens of young children have suffered the mutilations of war. They have been innocent victims of landmines buried in public roads, booby traps, buildings set on fire, villages bombed, rockets fired at random. The South African Army is garrisoned in numerous remote mountain and desert outposts throughout Namibia. The military services in South Africa were integrated in 1979 after a great deal of vehement debate. This was a radical step for a country in which apartheid, separation of the races, has been an official government policy for over 300 years. The question of civil rights for the black men sent to war continues to be hotly debated. Water is certainly the most precious single commodity in this harsh, arid terrain. A shower with a small allotment of water is one of the few amenities offered by outpost life. There's barely enough to drink, let alone for laundry purposes. It often has to be drawn from deep wells or during military operations, flown in by transport planes or helicopters. SWAPO hit-and-run attacks are usually made in the late afternoon so that oncoming nightfall makes pursuit difficult. A rare mid-morning attack provides opportunity for hot pursuit. The counterattack procedure follows a carefully devised drill for these paratroopers. There is always the danger of an ambush being set, but that is one of the known hazards in the routine course of anti-guerrilla warfare, whether it be Africa, Central America, or Asia. In the aftermath of battle, the combatants can only stand around silently. As excitement and fear abate, they view with grim resignation the results of yet another episode in this long and bitter conflict. The cleanup process begins. The wounded and dead must be tended. In this war, wounded guerrillas receive the same medical treatment as do soldiers. Enemy dead are routinely evacuated. The bodies might be required by military intelligence for fingerprinting and other identification purposes. Acts of terror are considered crimes. If the terrorist can be identified as the attacker, the crime is theoretically solved. Also, by analyzing the guerrilla losses, it may be possible to estimate the strength and potential future threat of the infiltrating groups. Guerrillas captured alive are a valuable source of intelligence. These young men are recruited largely from the very impoverished conditions with promises of education, support, and eventual political power.
You came back.
This is Johnny Angula. Recruited from a small village, he was sent to Moscow for training. Bright, ambitious, and canny, he was an ideal candidate for the training. When captured, he commanded an artillery battalion in his Angola sector.
And what sort of classes did you have at that stage?
Just different classes. Artillery classes.
Which?
82 millimeter.
That's the artillery classes?
Yes, just artillery classes. Politics, tactics, topography, and also engineering.
Who were your instructors at this stage?
My instructor was Major Kuzmenko.
And which language did he give you instruction?
Just in Russian, and there was always an interpreter.
So the lecture was
English,
given?
yes, English interpreter.
Was it fairly easy to follow?
Yes.
Did you yourself learn any Russian?
No, just in English.
You never learned Russian? You never learned to write or to speak Russian?
No.
For this film, Angula was taken back to his roots, to his home village, and to parents who had not seen their son for 8 years. The visit was made under armed guard. Johnny Angula's elderly parents were astonished. They did not at first recognize the battle-hardened veteran as the fresh-faced teenager who disappeared into the night more than 8 years ago. They felt embarrassed. Was this some sort of trap by the army? A bad joke? Was this really their son, Johnny? As the mother realized the truth, she began to show her happiness. The family members gathered to greet the long-lost brother.
She said that she didn't dream about me.
Did you know you were alive?
Well, I was captured on the 8th of July last year. On the 7th of July, one of our vehicles detonated a landmine. We were given an order just to check the place where our vehicle was detonating a landmine. And on our way to that place, we were detected by the South African Army, and we make a contact. I was wounded, was captured alive.
Natango sisika. Natango kalinga.
Together, for the first time in years, the family gave thanks in prayer for Johnny Angula's safe return. A strange ideological paradox for a man whose devotion lies elsewhere.
What equipment would you use?
Just the Russian weapons.
Why?
Because the Russian weapons are very good.
This is probably one of the most subtle instruments of terror yet devised by man. It was designed by the Russians for war, and it has been adapted by every terrorist movement in the world. The RPG-7 rocket and launcher. It's minute, can be handled by one man, it can knock out a fair-sized tank. Correctly placed, it can also knock out several men in a patrol, or a building, or any target that the enemy chooses. It's constructed in such a way that even an idiot could handle it properly because it's got no recoil. Yet, this projectile moves at the speed of an average handgun bullet.
Black Namibian volunteers play a vital role in the police security forces. Their natural ability combined with disciplined training makes them, as it does their enemies, into formidable bushfighters. Young blacks seek these jobs eagerly, for they're one of the rare, well-paying opportunities open to them. It is not unusual for a black policeman to support 2 or 3 generations of his family. Captain Saki Fanzel of the Police Special Forces Unit has commanded a black combat unit for over 2 years.
From almost 600 terrorists. What motivates these blacks to work for you? Is it the money?
I don't think it's the money. I mean, it's definitely not the money that motivates me. But it could be for the same reasons. After 2 years, I think that perhaps they've got the same motivations as I have. That they feel about this issue as strongly as I do. Otherwise, they would not be in it. I believe in what I am doing. And after 2 years, I would say that it is the same with them as well. Because we've been in so many contacts. And I've no doubt that they would never change sides the way they're fighting at this stage.
Do you think that they know what the threat is? I mean, to take it to its other extreme?
Well, being so close to Angola, I think they've definitely got close contact with refugees and from the Oshimbundu tribe from Angola that have run across the border because of the the current communist regime in Angola. I think they've got a very realistic idea of communism, and perhaps at this stage, that is what is motivating.
Is it not possible, because you're so successful, that SWAPO might have tried to infiltrate you in the past, and that you might right now be have SWAPO members in your ranks?
I doubt it very strongly, because the blacks in the unit, with the loyalty that I've enjoyed in the 2 years that I've been up here, I would be very surprised if any of my blacks in my team would be supporting SWAPO secretly, perhaps. Because they've been in firefights with SWAPO for the last 2 years, about once a week. Most of them have been in about 40-odd contacts, and we've lost a few men and had a few wounded as well. Surely after that, I don't think they would tolerate anybody in the ranks that might be from the SWAPO side. Well, as you might have seen, our success depends largely on the information that we get. I think that is the problem in any terrorist war. I think it was the problem in Rhodesia as well, that you've got the local population in the middle, and that SWAPO expects them to help them, and we expect them to aid us as well. at this stage, I would say that we have got the respect, all our blacks have got the respect and the goodwill of the local population. Otherwise, they would never have come forward with information at the rate that we get, like they have done until now.
These blacks are natural trackers and bushfighters. The majority can read signs on the ground that most white soldiers fail even to notice. Often, they operate on a sort of sixth sense, a gut instinct that sometimes makes the difference between defeat or victory, survival or death. Fast and effective tracking eliminated this SWAPO guerrilla squad. These guerrillas ambushed a police convoy at midday. By early afternoon, police and army trackers were on their trail. These bush encounters between two determined opponents that show each other no forbearance are usually short and very deadly. SWAPO remains a hidden enemy, often secreted in the land. Trained dogs are used to pick up their trail. Once spotted, mounted troops which can travel 5 times faster than a man on a day. Warfare on horseback has been used in the bush by the South Africans since long before the Boer War. The war is not only restricted to the low-lying areas of the Angolan border. The enemy has also infiltrated the mountains of the west. Patrols sometimes last up to 2 weeks in remote, barely habitable terrain. These soldiers are patrolling in a region where a booby trap was reported to have killed a local tribesman the previous day. The men are instructed to cultivate friendship with the area tribes. An understanding of their lives and customs makes the job of patrolling their hills more effective. This tribe gathered to grieve the loss of its member. In many parts of the Third World, the shrill ululating of the women is a traditional sound of mourning. It is also a reminder that the war brings death and destruction to many remote corners of the land. While the women mourn, the men prepare the grave. Young braves from other villages arrive for the burial. Many of these people have learned to travel with their protective amulets and loaded rifles. One of the duties of the Army is the formation and basic training of a local militia to assist in security in a region so vast it could swallow up 10 divisions.
The possible position of the Northern Front headquarters of SWAPO is in that vicinity, around about 7 to 8 kilometers northeast of Wanjiwa. There
At times, the war has spilled over into neighboring Angola. As with Israel, South Africa has used preemptive strikes across the border to hit at guerrilla bases in the neighboring territory.
As in the past and as normal, we will have nothing to do with the MPLA forces, except if they interfere with our operation against SWAPO, which at this stage we doubt very much. The mission then is we must locate and attack the Northern Front headquarters in that specific area, first of all, to inflict maximum casualties upon the enemy. Secondly, to gain the maximum amount of intelligence or information. Thirdly, to take maximum equipment and weapons from the enemy or to destroy that equipment of the enemy. And then fourthly, to disrupt the command and control system of the Northern Front headquarters.
Nós louvemos o seu nome santo. Você é nosso protetor e salvador. Amém.
Okay, good luck for the operation. This must go well. Okay.
A military operation begins with a prayer. This unit has a large number of Angolan Portuguese-speaking troops. The blessing was given in their language. As dawn appeared, the troops became tense. The strike into Angola was about to begin. Experience has proved that, although this remains a low-key war, massive firepower is the most effective means of initially dislodging the enemy. Death is as stark and uncompromising to the participant as to the observer, an ocean away. On this occasion, it was all the more macabre considering that more than 10,000 people have died since the war began. Martyrs to a cause, or a succession of causes that make war in a dozen theaters of conflict worldwide. The tragedy is that the people of Namibia, who have been struggling for their freedom for almost 100 years, are still bleeding. Many of them barely comprehending, if at all, the ideologies that brought this war to their land. After the guerrillas are defeated or driven off, the area must be combed for mines and buried arms supplies. Arms and ammunition are cached in widespread areas to supply the marauding SWAPO squads. Mines were partially buried here. As the area sweep continues, helicopters circle above to spot any SWAPO activity. It is a feature of this protracted bush war that SWAPO makes extensive use of underground defenses in much the same way as the Viet Cong did in Southeast Asia. Sometimes the living conditions are sparse. There are always area maps, propaganda pamphlets, and handouts. And then, occasionally, security forces hit the jackpot, and a huge cache of arms is found, such as these boxes of Soviet 81mm recoilless gun ammunition. In this area, a total of more than 100 boxes of good quality ammunition was uncovered and removed.
The attack which took place last night yielded a fairly substantial supply of Soviet weaponry. You've got the four main section weapons of the Soviet Army. The AK-M with the compensator over here, there's several of them. The RPK, this automatic weapon. The PKM, this is also an automatic weapon, much favored by the terrorists. And the RPG-7, there were several of them with quite a few bombs. They were used in the attack, but not effectually. Another weapon was this Dragunov, much loved by some of the terrorists that come over, but quite rare. It's the sniping rifle of the Soviet Army. Expensive by terrorist standards, and apparently quite effective, but not used to the full advantage by the terrors. Also in this hall was a 60mm mortar tube with mortars, various kinds of Russian strims like this anti-tank rocket grenade with a hollow charge, and the anti-personnel one, a thinner version of the same thing. One doesn't know how stable this stuff is, so one handles it carefully. And possibly the most interesting item of all as far as this war is concerned are some of the boots which were found on the men. It's an East German boot, again very popular with the terrorists, and it has been fitted with an anti-tracking sole to hide the chevron pattern inside. Well done, quite sophisticated, and from what I gather, fairly effective in trying to get rid of security force patrols coming after them.
If weapons and ammunition are in good condition, they are invariably shifted back to base, usually by helicopter. Apart from what South Africa captures on the battlefield, much of the material used in this African war comes locally made, largely as a result of the United Nations imposed arms embargo. Because of South Africa's racially dominated internal politics, most of the world's leading arms suppliers have refused to sell weapons to Africa's last white-ruled state, and the local weapons industry was born of necessity. There has also been a fair amount of subterfuge associated with the developing modern weapons. This G5 artillery piece, with a maximum range of 26 miles, was developed to considerable Western consternation, with unsuspecting Canadian and Finnish assistance. It has been rumored, though not confirmed, that this 150-millimeter weapon is capable of firing a nuclear shell. Adapted for the African bush, the G5 becomes a motorized version of the gun with maximum mobility and maneuverability. Because of vast distances in remote areas, the South Africans have developed an incredible range of frequency-hopping field radios. The state-of-the-art, in terms of the local manufacturing industry, is still quite basic. Most assemblies are done by hand. Perhaps the most distinctive achievement has been the development of a fairly sophisticated range of new generation bushfighting vehicles. Many of these have been adequately adapted for protection against the landmine. It is not surprising, therefore, to learn that South African fighting vehicles have recently been spotted in several other armies with guerrilla-associated problems. Armor-piercing bullets were ineffective against Soviet-built tanks in Angola 5 years ago. These newly developed armor-piercing incendiary bullets solved that problem. The South African Army needed heavy armor, so they bought scrap British Centurions from military junkyards. These were stripped down in very limited factory facilities and restructured to develop their tank, the Elephant, a third-generation main battle tank with heavy guns and laser sighting devices. Then, in 1976, South African forces in Angola captured a Russian multiple rocket launcher, stripped it down, and built their own version of the weapon. It, too, now forms part of the South African arsenal. Contrary to most expectations, the arms industry has flourished. South Africa has become the world's 8th largest arms exporter. One of the saddest aspects of this border war was the unbridled destruction of what, not so very long ago, was an ordered and prosperous society. In a decade of internecine and cross-border strife, huge areas of Angola have been laid waste. Towns and villages like this one, just a short distance across the border from Namibia, have been destroyed, either by UNITA, the Angolan rebel movement, Angolan government forces, or by South African army raids. Each occupying force has left its own version of propaganda. In a program of reconstruction, the South Africans have encouraged the residents of some of the ravaged towns to help clean up the mess and restore a measure of normalcy in a region continuously racked by war.
Most of the fighting in this war has been small-scale contacts between patrols and guerrilla groups. There are no stand-up battles involving large contingents of forces. However, there have been deep incursions into Angola, largely to eliminate SWAPO concentrations and supplies. There are many calculated risks involved in the search and destroy missions. There's the possibility of having to fight the Angolan army or having to take on a Cuban battalion such as those that are stationed in Angola. Or, as the South Africans have done, you may create an international furor if a Russian military advisor and his wife happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. This actually happened on one mission. The wife was unfortunately killed and the Russian advisor was captured and later released back to Moscow.
The probe for SWAPO's bases in Angola has gone on intermittently for years. A deep probe attack can sometimes extend several hundred miles into Angola and calls for a massive assembly of troop carriers and armored fighting vehicles. Coincident with the launching of an attack, the Air Force is put on red alert. The Soviets introduced MiG-21 fighters into the southern region of Angola, and the South Africans countered by deploying Mirages. One of the unfortunate aspects of this war is that what starts as a guerrilla conflict sometimes escalates into a full-scale conventional battle. In tandem with the advance, helicopters ferry supplies to key points along the strike. Many of the local people have been displaced from their homes, particularly in southern Angola. One of the rare treats for them is food and candy thrown to them by the troops on the column passing through. South Africans like to compare their wartime strategy to that of Israel. Their preemptive strikes are invariably designed to weaken the SWAPO movement at source, to deprive them of secure bases deep inside a neighboring territory, and often to counter one violent act with another. In some respects, the South Africans have been successful where the Israelis have not. While the war remained sporadic, it was onslaughts such as this one, codenamed Operation Daisy, that resulted in an eventual downscaling of hostilities. An army on the move has to take everything it needs with it: fuel, food, ammunition, and, to some, the most important commodity of all, water. Because of the fear of contamination of local supplies, tanker trucks bring potable water. Once stopped in late afternoon, some of the vehicles are camouflaged. But wooded cover is limited, so the main body forms a defensive ring out in the open, leaving them exposed to possible attack by Angolan aircraft. As protection, Air Force Mirage interceptors are put on immediate alert. They are 4 minutes from the forward position in the event of being scrambled.
277 is ready and standing by.
Individually, each man prepares himself and his equipment for the night. The men sleep in foxholes. The last chore is preparing weapons and ammunition for the battle that looms in the morning. Pre-battle breakfasts are a silent ritual in any army. To some of these men, it could be the last meal. The assault begins. This heavy onslaught on a SWAPO base camp began with a mortar attack. Fanning out, infantry fighting vehicles put out fire in rapid volleys. Reports came through of MiG activity. The signal was flashed to an airbase in Namibia.
Mainstay on the allocated channel. We're standing by.
The Mirages were scrambled into action. Air-to-ground radio traffic monitored locally indicated that the pilots were Cuban. The Mirage's camera recorded the direct hit that destroyed the MiG-21. The attack continued against moderate resistance. In most cases, SWAPO and the Angolan army prefer tactical withdrawal, a principle effectively implemented in the face of superior firepower. SWAPO bases cover areas sometimes miles across to avoid vulnerable concentrations which can be destroyed from the air. Sweeping through one of these strong points takes days, and there are often more casualties in this phase than in the actual onslaught, because the enemy becomes a well-hidden mine or booby trap. The routine practice in dealing with underground bunkers is to blow them up. Another way of coping with the bunkers is to send in a captive. He knows where the booby traps have been laid. A patrol spots the enemy on the move. Word is hurriedly passed back to command. The options are carefully weighed, and a heli-borne strike is called for.
Okay, chaps, we've got positive info now that the Terrs are in this area over here. And we're going to fly in there now with the choppers and we're going to try and get them out of the bush there. You've got to be very careful and you must remember all the drills we've done so far. Remember, must make use of the mortars. The company Sergeant Maida, he will use the mortars and he will concentrate it on the enemy weapons and their mortar positions. Make sure what you do it according to the drills, because that will save our lives. You got it? Yes, and we must be determined to do that. You got that? Yes, sir. Right. Let's go to the chopper. Yes, sir. Right. Hurry up. Hurry up.
All operational flights in this region are as close to the ground as possible to avoid guided missiles.
Morning, gentlemen. We are at D+6. Our order group for this morning, we're going to start off with the air briefing. I suppose all of you have heard about the dogfight which took place involving a Russian-built MiG-21, supposedly flown by Cuban pilots. The situation now has escalated slightly, so I think, generally speaking, we must be prepared. We have made our move this morning, which I think was a good move. Whether it is going to prove that it was in fact necessary is merely a supposition. We'll see in a couple of days' time whether it was worth our while.
The lightning strike by paratroopers presents new opportunities for forward operating ground units. Contact is made. A bold tactical maneuver, if successful, will shorten most battles. But there's always a price. The quick evacuation of the wounded out of this remote tropical region has minimized the death toll. Landmines littered the area, and attacking vehicles bore the brunt of several blasts. Mine patterns used in guerrilla warfare have taught these troops to be cautious after a blast. Landmines are never laid singly.
Okay, now I've got you.
Some intelligence can be obtained from the tribespeople in the area. In retrospect, Operation Daisy was regarded as a limited success. Distance covered, 200 miles in 3 days, prevented complete surprise. More important, there was no way to effectively and quickly sweep a 30-square-mile base area. As in all small wars, success is measured in terms of body count. This very uneven struggle has produced its own grim measure of these statistics. Equipment recovered was the usual mix of East Bloc armaments, landmines, rifles, ammunition. But this time, a portable Russian SAM-7 ground-to-air missile was found. More prisoners were taken, all of them flown back to Namibia for interrogation. Because they would be landing at a key military base, the hostages were blindfolded to avoid them divulging information in the event of escape. And then, casualties started coming in, some badly wounded in the infantry onslaught which followed the mechanized attack. A few were on the brink of death, and army doctors were pressed to keep those that they could save alive. But there is an element of tragedy in this conflict that goes beyond the dead and wounded, or race. Both sides are highly motivated and fighting for ideals that they vehemently believe in. The complexities, nevertheless, are real and very emotional. Both sides now realize that even after 18 years, this is a war that cannot be won on the battlefield. At the same time, Neither side is prepared to yield on its ideological stance. The innocents in between, like these bushmen, have lost control of their lives and their destinies. The motivation of the South Africans and SWAPO is fairly clear. What remains murky, however, is the motivation of the international powers that lend their silent support to the continuation of fighting. The reality for many of the participants in this small war, as in all the small wars of the last few decades, is that peace remains a very fragile hope.